dear students, myself Gangadhar Solanke, and I welcome you all to the MCGM's virtual classroom. My dear students, today we are going to start with the subject geography, and in standard 9th geography, today's our topic is exogenetic processes part 2. In the part first of this chapter, exogenetic processes, we discussed about the weathering, and in that the type of weathering, that is mechanical weathering, chemical weathering, biological weathering, and the mass movements. Now, today in this topic we are going to discuss about erosion, and we have learnt in the previous lesson that the earth's surface wears away because of erosion. The eroded material gets carried away by agents, and when the speed of the agents reduces, the materials get deposited. The agents like running water, glaciers, wind, sea waves and groundwater do the work of erosion, transportation and deposition. Now, because of these agents, the earth's surface keeps on undergoing changes and new landforms are formed. So, here in this topic we will study some of these landforms. So, the first thing, running water flows naturally in a direction according to gravity along the slope and makes its own way. Again I am repeating, running water flows naturally in a direction according to gravity. जिस तरफ gravity रहेगा और it depends on the gravity, the slope and make its own way. This is called a flow of water. Now, when many such flows of water come together, a river is formed. अलग अलग जगह से अलग अलग वाटर फ्लोज स्टार्ट होते हैं, और ये सब वाटर फ्लो जब एक साथ मिलते हैं तो उससे रिवर बन जाती है. रिवर इज फॉर्म्ड when many such flows of water come together. Now, the slope of the land, the type of rock, volume of water flowing in the river and the length of the flow, volume of sediments in the river, etc. are the factors on which the erosional, transportational and depositional work of the rivers depend. Here now you can see how a river is formed. When many water flows come together, then a river is formed, as you can see on the screen. And now the next thing, the rivers originate at a much higher altitude from the sea level. Here the river flows at a great speed, and therefore its power to erode is great because of the speed. So, the river bed and the river banks, get eroded because of the fast flow of water, sand, particles, pebbles, etc. and the various tributaries joining the main river. All these lead to the formation of gorges, V-shaped valleys and waterfalls, as you can see on the screen. Sand particles, pebbles and here gorges. So, these are the erosional work of rivers, as you can see on the screen. And then the next thing about this, transportation and deposition by rivers. Riverbed, riverbank, sand particles, pebbles, causes V-shaped valleys and waterfalls. When the river reaches the sea, its riverbed becomes very wide and its speed becomes very slow. So, when the riverbed becomes very wide, its speed becomes very slow. The sediments of the river get deposited and its banks, you can see again, the sediments of the river get deposited in its bed and on its banks. Thus, the landforms like floodleaves, floodplains and deltas are formed because of deposition of sediments. A river flows down the slope from a hilly region, and at the foothills the change in the slope causes deposition of coarse sediments, and as these are deposited in the triangular shape, they form an alluvial fan. Here now the factors that determine the deposition of sediments, which includes the length of the levers, then volume of water, amount of sediments and the slope of the river and also the earth's surface. Thus, landforms like floodleaves, floodplains and deltas are formed because of deposition of sediments. In this now the next thing, a river flows down the slope from a hilly region, and at the foothill the change in the slope causes deposition of the coarse sediments, and these are deposited in a triangular shape like this. Here you can see they form an alluvial fan. Again you can observe the figures. I will go for the next one. Canyons, a long, deep, narrow valley with steep cliff walls. It cut into the earth by running water, it often having a stream at the bottom. Again here you can see. And the next one, that is gorge. A gorge is a steep V-shaped valley formed by the vertical erosion of the land by the river. The Indus Gorge in Kashmir is the deepest in the world. Indus, which one is the deepest? If the region is arid where there is little weathering and mass wasting on the valley sides, the gorge will be impressively deep. If such a gorge is deep, long and U-shaped, then we call it canyon. How do V-shaped valleys form? Just go through these 4 figures. A river's discharge is low in the upper course, and so the river only has enough energy to erode downwards. This is called vertical erosion, as you can see here. Then in the second one, the valley's sides are slowly broken down through weathering. Here now you can see. Then in the third one, the weathered material is transported via gravity and rainfall towards the river channel, and this process steepens the valley's sides. And the last one, The steep-sided and narrow valley shape that is created is a typical of upland rivers, and this is how V-shaped valleys form. Like the river, next one we are going to talk about is glacier, work of glaciers and landforms. Like the river, a glacier to carries out work of erosion, transportation and deposition. In a regions where the temperatures are generally below freezing point, precipitation is in the form of snowfall and layers of snow accumulate on the earth's surface because of snowfall. So, the heavy weight of these overlaying layers makes the snow move along the slope, and at the base of the layer the snow starts melting because of the friction and the pressure from above. So, glacier starts moving slowly along the slope. Now, because of this erosion work by glaciers, though its velocity is less, the mass of the ice is more, and hence the glacier erodes its own banks and its bed on a large scale. So, the erosional work of glaciers produces landforms like sucks, erodes, horns, U-shaped valleys, hanging valleys and ship backs. Here again it is very easy to understand such concepts by observing or by studying the figures, and as you can see in the figure, and then the next thing, transportation and deposition by glaciers. The erosional work of glaciers produces landforms like sucks, erodes, horns, U-shaped valleys, the hanging valleys and ship backs. And then the transportation and deposition by glaciers. Here again in detail you can see, so that you can understand the concept of that particular landform. The glaciers carry sediments with them. These sediments are called moraines. Depending on the location of the deposits, moraines can be divided into 4 types, that is ground, lateral, medial and terminal. Here now you can see this one is medial, this one is lateral and this one is terminal. The depositional work of glacier produces landforms like drumlins and eskers. Here again you can see how it formed. And now the next one, work of the wind and the landforms produced. You have learnt earlier that the movement of air is called wind. Wind is a gaseous agent of erosion, and the erosional, transportational and depositional work of wind is more prominent in deserts and semi-arid regions. So, if we go in detail, wind carries small sand particles, small pebbles along with it, and these particles cause erosion along rocks coming in the way due to friction. These lead to formation of mushroom rocks, deflation hollows and yardings. Here you can see. So, the erosional work of wind. Deflation basins called blowouts are hollows formed by the removal of particles by wind. Blowouts are generally small but may be up to several kilometers in diameter. If there is a slight depression in the ground, wind erosion may form a larger bowl-shaped hollow called blowout. Here again you can see. As a result, specific landforms are formed, that is sand dunes, barchans, seps, ripple marks, loess plains, etc. are formed by wind deposition. The wind deposits an stratified loamy material on an extensive region. This results in the formation of loess plains, and these deposits includes silt, clay and sand. Now the next one, work of sea waves and the land forms. When the waves break at the coast, they bring with them water, transported stones, pebbles, sand particles, etc. In coastal areas, sea waves carry out erosional, depositional and transportational work. Winds and tides causes the movements of seawater, and as a result waves come to the coast. Now, because of their hitting the rocks at the coast, erosion of the rocks occurs, and in coastal areas having wide beaches, waves carry out depositional work. Now, again if you observe this figure, you can easily understand how it works. Next thing, when the waves break at the coast, they bring with them water, transported stones, pebbles and sand particles. This leads to the erosion of the coast, and because of the chemical and hydraulic action of the sea waves too, erosion occurs. Now, here you can see beach, bay, stack and stump, cave, arc, that we will see in detail. So, landforms like wave cut, platform, sea caves, sea arcs, sea cliffs are formed because of the erosional work of the waves. In this figure you can see all these things: sea caves, sea arcs and sea stack. Landforms like wave cut platforms, sea caves, sea arcs, sea cliffs are formed because of the erosional work of the waves. Now, the next thing, depositional work of sea waves. The eroded materials accumulate at the seabed, and because of tides they keep on moving towards the coast and away from the coast. They become fine because of attrition and hitting each other. So, deposition of such materials occurs at the places where the effect of waves is less, and because of this landforms like beaches, sandbars and lagoons are formed due to depositional work of the sea waves. So, here in this topic we are talking about the landforms which are formed due to the erosional work of different things like sea waves or of wind. And now the next thing and the last from this topic, work of groundwater and landforms produced. Now, the rainwater seeps below the earth's surface through porous rocks or cracks in the rocks and this water accumulates in the non-porous layer of the rock. This accumulated water is called groundwater, and the soluble minerals in the water get dissolved and flow with the groundwater. This is the erosional work of the groundwater. Here now very easily you can understand this process. When the groundwater evaporates or the volume of the soluble minerals is more than the solubility of the groundwater, the deposition of dissolved material starts and landforms like sinkholes, limestones, caves, stalactites and stalagmites are formed. Here now again you can see. Subscribe the channel and press bell icon to get notifications. So my dear students, this is all for today. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe, take care.